This thing on. All right. Yo, this is Justin again. This is actually take two. I should remember to turn off notifications so that they just don't appear randomly when I'm like recording. But okay, yeah. So I was kind of contemplating on what topic I should do next for one of these kinds of videos, and I wanted to go down a more simple route in terms of concepts. While I was working on an auth state switch, it kind of hit me that conditionals are a pretty prevalent topic in terms of coding or programming. The basis of this field is around this idea of a pragmatic thought process. How do we problem solve our way from point A to point A, point 5 to point B? Kidding about the 8.5 part, but also not really kidding. But in all seriousness, in actuality, when we think about problem solving and how it involves a flow of steps, there's sort of this interconnection of logic as a concept that is intertwined with how we problem solve. In its most basic form, problem solving can be derived as a bunch of if and else statements, which to no surprise happens to be what most people learn about when they're first introduced to the programming sphere. For example, let's say if Justin has 8 apples, then I will have 9 apples, else I have no apples. Not the best or most concrete example, but this gets the point across. Conditionals are often associated with this idea of state, which as a concept can be a bit confusing when you are first learning about programming. In OOPs or object-oriented programming languages, the state of an object is essentially depicted as the status, or a better term I would like to use would be the condition of the object. If I were to go back to our apple example, when I say if Justin has 8 apples, there needs to be an existing condition that warrants this if. In this case, let's say that the base condition or the base state is that Justin has 4 apples. Then when we traverse through our thought process and ask ourselves if Justin has 8 apples, then I will have 9 apples. But the base existing state is that Justin only has 4 apples at that time. So that would mean I have no apples since we're abiding by that else statement. Now, where exactly am I trying to go with this? For one, I wanted to make the connection with conditionals and states mainly because this is how React operates. And React is the forefront of programming at the moment. And also, I use React too, so I'm a bit biased. React is a component based library. Now, think of components literally. What is a component? It's a part of a whole. It's like a cog that allows for another gear to turn. Or we can say that flour is an ingredient to make bread or a component to make bread. In terms of programming, more specifically, if we orient ourselves towards object-oriented programming, then components, oh, why did I say it like that? Components. Then components would essentially be objects that make up a program. And each object has its own functionality. And with its own functionality comes its own set of rules, or to make a play on our previous topic, its own protocol. In React, these distinct components encapsulate this functionality or this behavior in accordance to the state of the components themselves. And state is not necessarily derivative of time, despite everything I've said up till now being time-based, which brings me more towards this idea of the state of a state. For better terminology, we want to ask ourselves whether a state is mutable or immutable. Maybe some terms you've heard, like flown around before. Mutable being that the state can be modified once declared or created, and immutable being that the state cannot be modified once declared or created. This sounds way more confusing than it should be, right? I said that state of an object or the state of an object was the condition of the object before, which I want to re-emphasize that that in itself is true. State can be perceived as behavior. And in this instance, we can say that the behavior of an object can either be modified or not be modified, be mutable or be immutable. I also think we should be looking at objects more so as data, which means that the behavior of data is either mutable or immutable. A common misconception that I believe trips people up when they're learning about the concept of state is that state is data, but state really is just the condition of the object in which that object is data. Also, I guess another misconception would be that the data is all just numbers. Though in a theoretical meaning, we can say that data is just a bunch of zeros and ones that are translated and processed. In terms of software engineering, I want to more so instill a thought process that is more practical. In software engineering, we create and improve on software and applications meant for real world use. Having a conceptual background is incredibly helpful, but understanding the practical usage cases is more apparent in this line of work. I don't see data as a bunch of zeros and ones. I see data in terms of components, or I see data in terms of components as components, components that make up the program that is the software or the application that we're bringing into the real world. If we think more on a physical sense, a lot of these concepts become a lot easier to understand, which is basically the point I want to get across. Again, I didn't really go super in depth about conditional rendering of states and the syntax involved with it. I didn't teach you how to code a conditional render. All I want to do is just explain concepts at a more generalized level, and I hope I accomplish that in some way in this session. All right, I'm gonna go now. I need to finish some work. Also, I have a meeting in 10 minutes. So yeah, I'll see y'all later, and peace.